Good morning. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for being here. It's funny because when they contacted me about coming to talk today, they're like, oh, you're a local champion. I said, well, I'm one of many. And honestly, I have an amazing colleague here today, Anna Shalley, and she has been behind a lot of this work, helping make harm reduction in Richmond happen. And besides her, harm reduction isn't new. Harm reduction's been done for decades in the United States. It's not the principles themselves, I'm sure most of you in this room participated in today. How many folks today were lucky enough to ride their bike here? Did you wear a helmet? Uh-oh. Okay. How many of y'all rode in a car? Did you wear a seatbelt? Okay, so that's harm reduction put in a very, very large context. So I only have 15 minutes. I'll try not to get too distracted. I work at the Health Brigade, formerly known as the Fan Free Clinic here in Richmond, Virginia. We've been around for almost 50 years. What is harm reduction and what role does it play in the opioid crisis? So I could talk about harm reduction for hours, and it is a giant spectrum, like many other things we're talking about over the course of these last few days. Harm reduction around the opioid crisis, and in Richmond and in Virginia in particular, I'll try to hone in on this. What can it look like? One of the things we provide is referrals and resources, syringe access or exchange, safer use education, HIV, Hep C testing, overdose prevention. I was very pleased to see a relatively big line around Kate over here. Please take a minute to get your naloxone if you haven't already. That's a big piece of what we're providing in the community. And we've got awesome partners like Kate over at Richmond City doing the same work. So if that's not something you have access, that's something everyone should have access to in 2019, luckily. We are evidence-based. Harm reduction is, again, not new, and it's evidence-based. It works. It meets people where they're at. You'll hear that again and again, meeting people where they're at. And some people, I think, maybe are a little better at that than others. Sometimes we just say it, but then we start talking on top of them. So meeting people where they're at is really a lot about listening to them, letting them guide and be their own expert. And they're lucky enough to have walked into your door or been in your community. So take the time to honestly sit with the idea of what it means to meet somebody where they're at, not just having it be a phrase. So some of the principles of harm reduction. When it comes to, again, the opioid crisis, syringe access, naloxone, condoms are also a form of harm reduction principles. It incorporates a spectrum of strategies, including safer use techniques, managing use, and abstinence. So we're a piece of this puzzle, if you will. When someone comes in and we're really going to sit with them to see what they're ready to change, that some people are ready. They're one step or one call away from treatment. Other people want to get their syringes and get out the door. And we have to be accepting of all of that. We're not there to persuade anyone that treatment is the answer, because that's not the role we play. We're there for them whenever and however they're ready to find that. Some people, when we talk about looking at some techniques to use a little bit safer, for every syringe that we pass out 2 alcohol swabs. Why are you giving me all these alcohol swabs? This is like hundreds of alcohol swabs. Well, you're going to clean your injection site, and you're going to clean the surface where you're preparing your drugs every time. That's going to help reduce the risk of you getting harmed by what you're doing. We're really trying to look at any positive change at all, that they showed up as positive change. I had a lady call me from Northern Virginia, and she said, how do you know this is working? I said, well, they're showing up. And that, to me, is enough. That says a lot. They're walking into our door, and most people prefer to hang out a little bit longer and ask some questions. And a lot of times we'll get them in the room to get them their supplies and do the intake. And they'll say, wow, I've never had a second to just talk about this with someone. I can't believe this safe space exists. So they'll take advantage of it. And sometimes I do have to hurry because maybe we have a line in the waiting room. But just having that moment to be like, wow, this is a place I'm not being judged, and I can just talk about this and ask those questions. We use a person-centered approach, understanding that substance use is one part of a person's life, but that does not define them. We're all, I'm just going to go here. James Baldwin says it better than I do. And you have to have James Baldwin in every day of your life, really. I am what time, circumstance, history have made of me, certainly, but I am also so much more than that, and so are we all. So the folks that come in, they might be using substances, but 70% of them are employed. I don't know the percentage that are parents, but they're brothers. They have a lot going on. They're more than just their substance use. And I've heard a lot of very positive things the last couple of days. Everyone seems to be pretty on top of person-first language. That's a big barrier, the stigma piece. A lot of our individuals do come in with a lot of shame and guilt. And if we can kind of help, every conversation you can have about reducing stigma, I think is really powerful. Because if they can, when you look at the research at some of the things that are happening in Portugal and other places where you take away the stigma, how powerful that is. So remember, of course, whenever we have media show up, they just can't help themselves of using pictures of people with syringes and cookers and making it all very dramatic. Or it's just like when they show people that are incarcerated, you only see these sad, sad faces. And that's a piece of it. But so is laughter, so is humor. So are the other things that are happening in their life. It's not the only thing that's happening, and we respect all parts of them that come in that door. Harm reduction works. Folks that come in to participate in syringe access programs are 5 times more likely to enter treatment. We've been seeing that. Not all the time. It's not ever what we're pushing for, and some of those people will enter treatment, and they'll come back again, right? Any door. I've heard that several times, and I'm glad we're hearing that. But people are asking, and some people aren't, but we're happy to meet people again where they are at. It reduces the risk of needle stick injuries to first responders. This is one of the ways we got to partner with Richmond City Police Department, is saying, hey, you know what? By having these services, and they've had a lot of success in other cities, this is one of the reasons why y'all should be on board. And Richmond City Police Department does support our program. And they have a written commitment not to come around our program unless we call them. And that hasn't happened. We've only been open about 6 months, but we have not had the police there yet. It reduces overdose deaths. We've had several of our clients come back in and, hey, I need more naloxone. I used it. I brought somebody back. Great, awesome, it's working. It needs to be out there. Reduces new cases of HIV and hepatitis C. I'll have a slide about that briefly in a few minutes. But there's no evidence that harm reduction programs increase drug use or crime. Those of you who were here yesterday, you heard Dr. O'Connell speak to this. People aren't showing up. Hey, Ms. Westerholm, can you tell me how to inject heroin? I've never done it before. Right? That's just not the conversation that's happening. So this does not increase crime, drug use, or crime. There's even been some studies that show it reduces crime. In Baltimore, there was a great study. This just shows you some pictures of some of the people that have been doing this for a really long time. We did not have to reinvent the wheel. We were really lucky. This has been happening for a long time. The Netherlands, 1984, Tacoma, Washington, 88, 1990s. Thank goodness Virginia is finally there. So we are in what is called a public health emergency with the amount of deaths. The only reason I can even stand here today and have this support from so many people across the board is because we've lost so many others, right? This came with a price, a really ugly price tag, and it's not over yet. But it's because of all of the individuals we have lost. They don't have all of the numbers for 2018 yet. We haven't gotten all of the final reports yet. We'll have them in the summer. So if that's a number you'd like to see of how many people were lost in Virginia, just keep looking at Virginia Department of Health. It'll be out, I don't know if it's June or July. But from what I've heard, our numbers are about the same. They haven't increased for 18, which means we're doing something right. Opioids do kill more people annually in Virginia than car crashes or gunfire. And substance use has been shifting. This has been happening for a minute, from prescription opioid use to heroin and synthetic fentanyl. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and they were saying, yes, we have an opioid crisis, but what we really have with fentanyl is a poison crisis. We do give fentanyl test strips at our program, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say about 85% of our participants that use our fentanyl test strips that come back and give us the results that are testing for heroin are coming back positive. So there is fentanyl in almost all heroin in Richmond and most of the East Coast. So here's a little bit of data for you. This is looking at Richmond City versus the rest of the state. So Richmond's in red. You can look at the spike from about 2014 on up, and where we're at. Again, it looks like our numbers are, I think for Richmond, are very, very similar. I don't think that they've gone up a lot for 18, which is great news, but they haven't come down quite yet either, so there's still a lot of work to be done. This is hepatitis C. So there's a big public health component to this, of course. So you can see that jump, which is an incredible increase in a very, very short amount of time. And this is because hepatitis C, it's not like HIV, and it's not going to die the second it hits air. And we do a lot of education around hep C to our participants that come into our program. There are some studies that show that hep C can stay in a syringe for up to a month, 3 weeks to a month. They can be in cookers, they can be in water. All of these things can be shared depending on how you use your substances. So we do a lot of education around that, and we also have hepatitis C testing, and we can link them to treatment if they're interested. So this is, again, in 16 is when it was declared a public health emergency. In 17, the state approved these programs to open. June of last year, Wise County opened the first program. October, we opened ours. And then in November, Smith County opened theirs. And Virginia Department of Health says there's about 5 other localities that should be opening syringe programs throughout the state, hopefully very soon. So what are the laws? Local police must approve for these programs to exist. You have to get, to be a legal exchange program, you do have to have police approval, you have to have city approval, so there's a little process involved there. Syringe possession without a prescription is illegal in the state of Virginia. So our participants do get a card when they register with us. It has a code. We don't use people's names. It's all confidential. But if they get pulled over, they can show that card. Now, if they are comfortable sharing that card, so we leave it up to them at their discretion, what they're comfortable with. We have had one participant who has been pulled over with unused syringes, and he showed them the card, and the officer let them go. And I was pretty surprised, but that's progress. That's great. Our program in particular, we recognize the realities of poverty, class, racism, social isolation, trauma, sex-based discrimination, and other social inequalities. You can't talk about substance use without talking about racism. You can't talk about it without talking about poverty, in my opinion, because it plays such a giant role. So we really work to empower folks, let their voice be heard. We're always encouraging people. Give us some feedback. What's working? What would you do different? We're new. We've been open 6 months. We want to hear from people that are using our program, because they are the experts and we value them. We offer all of the supplies that are listed here, and testing, linkage to care if they would like it. Some of our folks come in and they say, oh, wow, you know, I haven't gone to my well woman visit in several years. Where can I go for that in Richmond? Okay, here, let me write this out for you. We had another participant that came in, and they saw a flyer we had posted for a free yoga class that was later that day. Can I go to this? Absolutely, you can go to the free yoga class. Like, this is, you know, wherever people are ready, here's your syringes and your education about how to use them as safely as possible, and this is when yoga starts, right? Everything we offer is free and confidential. So this is who we're seeing come into our program. Only about 50% is from Richmond proper. You can see the surrounding areas: Hanover, Chesterfield, Henrico, Prince George. We have some people that are traveling pretty far because Wise County is about five hours away. That's pretty far, right? That's why we need more access throughout the state. Again, we are committed to community engagement, and this is also what it took to get our doors open. We had to go out into the community and chat with our neighbors, chat with our faith-based communities, the law enforcement, hospitals. We need all these people on our team. Richmond City Health District, we've had a lot of advocates, so we're really lucky, and we have to continue getting this input from people who have lived experience, who are actively using. We need all of those voices at the table. We do a lot of outreach. So this was at a national testing event last year for HIV testing, but we also do, about on a monthly basis, go out to the neighborhoods that have the most reported overdoses, and we offer safer using kits. We can't distribute syringes doing street outreach, but we can do bleach kits, naloxone with a brief training, and condoms, and basically tell them about our program, right? Another piece of what we do is tied in with a program we do called the Charlie program. So we go into 11 different regional prisons and jails, and a piece of that education for the last 2 years has been around the opioid crisis. And we talk about overdose prevention and give those details. I wanted to point out that it's actually pretty hard to find a picture of people that look happy when they're incarcerated, but they're out there because that's part of what happens. It's not all doom and gloom, even though I would much rather folks were not becoming incarcerated in the first place. These are the safety basics we give everyone in the community: doing a test shot, avoid using alone, keeping tolerance in mind, some alternatives to not having clean equipment. So we have cards. We've printed 14,000 little business-sized cards, and if anyone wants to contact Anna or I about getting some of those cards, it has these very basic safety things on it, and it tells people how to get to our program if they're interested. If you want more information about comprehensive harm reduction in general, Virginia Department of Health, you can contact us. This is Wise County and Smith County, all the open programs in the state right now. And if you have any questions, this is me, this is my colleague Anna, and right now our program is open Monday evenings and Friday afternoons, and hopefully very soon we will have mobile programming available twice a week in different communities. That's it, thank you.